Alright everyone, welcome to the Rugby League History channel. I hope you're all well on this Wednesday. Tonight's video is going to be 10 players who never won a grand final. That's my video for tonight. It's going to be 10 players who did a lot of great things on the field. I'm not saying that these players I'm going to name were the best ever, but they've done some things on the field that warranted a premiership. They never won a grand final. They achieved plenty in the game, but they never got to lift that trophy. So that video is coming up for you very shortly. Before I do that though, I'm currently at 661 subscribers. I'm looking to get to 700, that's my next goal. My original goal was to get to 500 subscribers by the end of January. I smashed that and I'm doing quite well at the moment. So thanks to everyone that's recently subscribed to my channel, and thanks to everyone that's been supporting me from the very beginning. It's very much appreciated. So tonight I'm going to name 10 players that never won a grand final. Some of them are going to be obvious. Some of them are probably going to be players that you never heard before, and you're going to be thinking, well, who the fuck's that? I never heard of them before. But hopefully through this video you might learn of some of these players. Who knows? So coming in, the first player I'm going to name, this is in no particular order by the way, is a very obvious one that everyone would probably come up with in their list, and that's Einmarsh. He played a club record 330 matches for Parramatta between 1998 and 2012. He won 2 minor premierships with the club in 2001-2005. He played in 2 grand final losses, 2001 against Newcastle and 2009 against Melbourne. He was also a part of 5 preliminary final defeats in his playing career. He won the Dally M second rower of the year 5 times. He won a heap of other awards. He played 22 games for Australia, 17 games for New South Wales. In his last year, he ended up with a wooden spoon, and that's just sport for you. It can be a really cruel thing sometimes, because Einmarsh is certainly a player that deserved a premiership. The second player I'm going to name is Andrew Eddingshausen. So he played 327 matches between 1983 to 2000. He scored 166 tries. He played in 1 grand final, which was a Super League grand final in 1997. He played in 2 other preliminary finals. The last being in 1999 when Cronulla won the minor premiership that year. He played 25 games for Australia, 30 games for New South Wales, and he was the Dally M Centre of the Year in 1994 and 1996. Eddingshausen was definitely a player that deserved to win a premiership. The third player in the list is also another Cronulla legend. He also played for St George as well, Steve Rogers. He played a total of 231 games between 1973 and 1986. He played 21 games for New South Wales, 24 games for Australia. He played in 2 grand finals for Cronulla, the 1973 loss against Manly, and then the 1978 grand final draw, and then the replay loss against Manly. He was the Rothmans Medal winner in 1975, the Dally M winner in 1981, and he was an Australian Hall of Fame inductee in 2008. So once again, Steve Rogers is another player that deserved to win a premiership. The next one on the list, I'm going back in the time machine for this one, is Frank Baige. This is a player that hardly ever gets mentioned, despite the fact that he got made an immortal in 2018. In his career, he played a total of 153 matches. He scored 148 tries. His career started in 1911 when he made his first grade debut at the age of 16 for Glebe. He played between 1911 and 1927, so nearly 17 years in first grade. For Glebe, he holds all the record for Glebe, most appearances, most tries, most points, you name it. He played 138 matches for Glebe. He scored 139 tries. Mind you, he was a second rower / lock / prop. He held the record for the most tries scored by a forward until it was broken, I think about 70 or 80 years later, by Steve Menzies. He played in 3 grand finals. The 1911 grand final against East, which Glebe lost. The 1922 grand final where they got smashed against North Sydney. And then when he played for St George, he was in the 1927 grand final loss against South. He played 15 tests for Australia, and he played 29 games for New South Wales. And like I said, he's a Rugby League immortal. I think he's the only Rugby League immortal that hasn't won a grand final. Of course, Wally Lewis didn't win a New South Wales Rugby League premiership / NRL, but I count the Brisbane Rugby League Grand Final as a proper premiership, so Wally Lewis won't be in this list. The next player on the list is another player that you might be thinking, who the fuck's this? Keith Holden. He played 203 first grade matches for Western Suburbs between 1948 and 1961, which is also a club record. He played in 3 grand final losses for Western Suburbs, 1950, 1958, 1961. Western Suburbs won the premiership in 1948 and 1952. But in both of those years, Keith Holden didn't play, so he missed out there. He played 25 tests for New South Wales, 25 games, and 35 tests for Australia. He was one of the leading halfbacks of the 1940s, 50s and early 60s, and he was an Australian Hall of Fame inductee in 2008. He was also voted in the 2008 100 best players that's ever played in Australia. So Keith Holden is another player on the list that definitely deserved a premiership. The next one is another one that people might not know. It's Keith Barnes, also known as Golden Boots. He played 194 first grade matches for Bellarmine between 1955 and 1968. He scored 1,509 points, which was a New South Wales Rugby League / NRL record for the most points scored by anyone until he was taken over by Eric Sims. He was called Golden Boots because he was one of the best goal kickers back in the old days. He played 9 tests for Australia, 11 games for New South Wales. He played in 3 grand final losses, which were all against St George, 1956, 1964, 1966. He's an Australian Hall of Fame member. He was in the top 100 best players to ever play in Australia. And he's also in the Bellarmine team in the century. The next player on the list is, I'm pretty sure, one that you all know, Stacy Jones. He played 261 games for New Zealand. He also played in France as well with Le Catalan. He played in 1 grand final, which was the 2002 grand final, where he scored one of the best tries that you'll probably ever see in a grand final. He played 46 tests for New Zealand, and he was a Golden Boot winner in 2002 as the game's best player. I think Stacy Jones is arguably the best ever player that New Zealand's ever had. I don't think anyone will ever come close to Stacy Jones. The next player on the list is another one that people might not know. His name was Kevin Hastings, the father of Jackson Hastings. He played 230 matches for Eastern Suburbs between 1976 and 1987, which was a club record back then. He played in 1 grand final, which was the 1980 grand final loss against Canterbury. He was the 1981 Rothmans Medal winner as the best player. He was also the Rugby League Whig Player of the Year in 1980, 1981 and 1982. He was the Dally M halfback in 1980, 81 and 82. He's been described as probably one of the best ever players never to play for Australia or get higher representative honours. He only played the 1 match for New South Wales in, I think, 1981. And whenever you talk about Eastern Suburbs Sydney Roosters players and the greatest ever, Kevin Hastings' name is always thrown in there. He was one of the best halfbacks from the 1970s and 1980s, and he definitely deserved a premiership for his efforts. The next player on the list, number 9 on this list, is Roy Bull. This is another player that people might be going, who the fuck's Roy Bull? He played 177 first grade matches for Manly between 1947 and 1959. He was a foundation player for Manly. He played 26 games for New South Wales, 23 tests for Australia, and he was part of 3 losing grand finals for Manly in 1951, 1957 and 1959. Whenever people talk about Manly's greatest ever players or some of the best players that Australia's ever produced, Roy Bull's name's always in there. He was in the top 100 best players to ever play the game in the centenary year, so he's deserved on this list. And the last player on the list is Jarrod Heen. He played 214 first grade matches between 2006 and 2018, scoring 121 tries. He played 176 games for Parramatta, scoring 113 tries. He's Parramatta's second highest ever try scorer. He played 23 games for New South Wales. He played 11 tests for Australia and 10 tests for Fiji. He was the Dally M Player of the Year in 2009 and 2014. He only got to play in the 1 grand final, which was 2009. He was the Rookie of the Year, NRL Rookie of the Year 2006. He was the Dally M Winger of the Year in 2007. He won a host of other awards. Last year when they did the NRL Team of the Decade, Jarrod Heen made that as well. I think in recent times he's probably one of the best players never to win a premiership, so he gets on the list. Also, another thing I'll point out is that he played for a very weak Parramatta side, a very weak New South Wales side. I remember once the Queensland players were asked if any of the New South Wales players could meet the Queensland side, who would meet the current Queensland side? And Thurston, Smith and Cronk, they all went only one player, Jarrod Heen. So he's a deserving member of this list. Now, some honourable mentions. I know some people might be jumping up and down, but what about this player? So hopefully I cover it in this. Tommy Radonicus. He played 239 games in the 1970s and 1980s. 24 games for New South Wales. 20 tests for Australia. He only got to play in the one grand final, which was in 1981 for Newtown when they were beaten by Parramatta. So Tommy's on the list. And then, of course, you've got all the rest. I mean, you got all the North Sydney players over the years. Mark Graham, Gary Lawson, Billy Moore, David Fairley, Jason Taylor, Greg Florimo. You got all of them, like. Then you got all the Belmean players, Paul Siranen, Wayne Pearce, Benny Elias, Tim Brasher, Steve Blocker Roach, you got all them. Plus, Mark Coyne could have made this list. Mario Fennick was another player that played nearly 250 games, didn't win out. Simon Mannering, 300 gamer, no premiership. Also, I could have put Matty Bowen in there for North Queensland. He could have gone in there. I mean, there's so many players out there that haven't won a premiership, but that was my list for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you have any suggestions of who I should have put in there, let me know in the comment section below. And if you have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. So thanks everyone for watching this video. This is Rugby League History signing off, and I'll catch us all later in the next video. Alright, tatty bye now.